Hello everyone and welcome back to the next video for the Muunilinst MOC update series. Thanks for all the support on the previous MOC update video. That one went over very well and you guys seem to be excited about this series, which is really cool because I'm also really motivated and excited to continue the series. So in today's episode I work on the debris field for the battlefield quite a bit, and I actually work on prototyping a few designs for the first trench. So I get a lot done in this episode and it's a very exciting one, so without any further ado, let's get started. Alright guys, so if you remember from last episode, I started to work on the battlefield and I came up with this kind of slope design right here that you're seeing, using slopes for this knot technique, giving it a cool wavy form, and you can see some of those lines and cracks in throughout the ground design. I didn't want to use tiles or like normal bricks for this knot design because that's just didn't feel like it worked very well for Muunilinst, and that's just been stuff I've done before and it wasn't very interesting from a texture level and I didn't think it would fit too well. I wanted to try something new and unique. So that's why I went with this kind of slope design, giving it a really cool angled and kind of smooth, wavy look that I really like. And there's a particular screenshot from Muunilinst during the speeder bike chase where you can see the wavy lines on there, and I think this represents it quite well, so I'm happy with the design so far. I have now run out of slope pieces though, in terms of the inverted slopes. This design uses normal slopes and inverted slopes. I've got plenty of normal slopes left, but I'm all out of inverted slopes, so that's unfortunate. So I'm gonna have to order more. So I thought the beginning of this episode would be me finishing up the battlefield in terms of like just putting the flat area down. But I wanted to extend it at least a little bit farther, and I'm out of inverted slopes, so I can't continue this anymore until I order more parts for it. So we might have to wait till the end of the episode to see the kind of ground of the battlefield extended a little bit more. So that'll have to wait till the parts come in, if they come in time for this episode. So what I'm gonna do instead is add some debris to this battlefield, and I'll talk about that right now. Alright, so while we wait for the slope pieces, I'm going to move on to the debris of the battlefield. But first I had to set up some fun little figure setups here I was like, I just really want to get to the speeder bike chase, so I just found 2 Lego set speeders and started putting them out on the battlefield. But I'm telling you, the figure setups are going to be so much fun with these speeder bikes. Like, it's going to be so much fun just to set up figures, and the poor clones, I just feel like they're just going to get absolutely destroyed, but I'm just so excited for that. The main thing I want to mention here is I went back in and watched the scene again, specifically the speeder bike chase, because originally the plan was to put a bunch of little rock mounds all over the place so that the clones would have some cover to kind of use throughout the battlefield. I went back in and rewatched the scene and I realized that won't really be accurate. There's not really too many rock structures that at least in the actual battlefield. The whole town, like the whole Muunilinst city that we're building, is surrounded by like giant mountains, but on the actual battlefield itself I didn't really see too many rock formations. Instead, what I did see was during the speeder bike chase, in the background there was a bunch of small little pieces of debris all throughout the battlefield. So I think in addition to the trenches and the craters and stuff like that, I want to add in a bunch of small little pieces of debris, like really small pieces of debris, half a pillar or a quarter of a wall that's just kind of sticking out of the ground. Small little things that the clones can take cover behind while they try to charge into the city, and then there'll also be trenches and craters. That way it's not just a plain flat surface, because I mean also in the show, like some of the parts where they do show the battlefield is very flat and there's not much going on near the actual battlefield area. Mostly when they get in the city is where there's a lot of cover, but I kind of want to change that because I don't want it to be super flat. I want it to look pretty good, so I want to add in all these small things so you get these cool speeder bike chases and all the speeder bikes zooming in between pieces of debris and like craters and trenches, and having, you know, regular infantry actually being able to be on the battlefield and have cover, so they're not out in the open getting impaled like that clone trooper right there by the speeder bike. But so that's what we're going to work on for this episode. I'm going to go ahead and get started on trying to add in a bunch of small little pieces of debris. Alright guys, so I've begun to build little parts of debris. As you can see, I mentioned previously that the speeder bike chase, there's lots of debris in the background where the speeder bikes are kind of zooming in and out of all sorts of little debris. So I kind of started to build just messing around. And if you guys have watched my previous build series, you know that I like to kind of show you guys prototypes. So I don't just show you finished designs. I like to show you the process that I go through. So here are the first designs I've kind of come up with here. You can see I've got a pillar out of the ground as if this was once a bigger structure and there was, you know, one pillar kind of standing right there. And then I've used 1x1 plates and 1x1 bricks to kind of give it this interesting texture, kind of like how I built the terrain on the last MOC. I kind of applied that here to this building to make it look kind of chipped and destroyed. And I did that in some previous buildings as well, and it seemed to work pretty good. So that's kind of what I got right there, just a small little piece of debris. And then over here, the second kind of thing I worked on was a little larger of a like destroyed part of a building here. As you can see, we've got part of like a roof with some actual sand green elements, and then we've got more pillars as if this thing just kind of collapsed and fell down. And then we've also got some dark gray pieces kind of in the middle right there of the sand green, and that would kind of supposed to represent part of it that's been destroyed. But this is just the kind of the little corner, and you also can see I've got some clones. This is maybe, a few troops will be taking cover kind of over here in this area behind some of these destroyed pieces, but this is kind of what we're going for so far. Then the idea here is that there's all these pieces of cover, and the speeder bikes will be able to like zoom in and out, kind of like it's an obstacle course almost, like they're zooming in. So now there's actually things for people to kind of drive their speeder bikes around and take cover behind, and then infantry, like I showed over there behind that building, are kind of taking cover over there as well. Maybe they really don't want to be out in the open when those speeder bikes are going all over the place. So that's kind of what these pillars are for, and to just make it so it's not such a flat landscape. So here's what I got so far. I'm going to go ahead and add some more debris, and I'll update you guys once I have some more progress. Alright, I have now completed a second little mini column structure right here. Pretty much the same exact design as the previous one, except for I found some pretty cool sand green like triangle pieces that I put on top of the column to make it a little more unique. So here's the second column, little piece of rubble that I built. Alright guys, so the order did come in with more inverted slopes. So I extended the battlefield. I'm not sure how well you can actually tell from the previous clips, but the battlefield has been extended a couple more rows here. So slowly we're moving the battlefield further along and making it a little larger. I kind of wish I had some more pieces, or I wish I would have planned ahead a little better so I could make like 2 more columns of slopes so that it could go like extended like another row. I think that would be nice, but this is kind of what I got going so far. Still really liking the design of the battlefield. And yeah, I think for now it's time to move on to making a trench and some craters. So I'm going to go ahead and explain kind of what I have in mind for that in the next video clip. But wanted to show you guys that I have expanded the battlefield, so it now is a little bit larger than you first saw earlier in the episode. Alright guys, so I've added in another piece of debris here. As you can see, this one is a little larger in size than the other small pieces of debris that I've been working on so far. This one I was able to incorporate some sand green parts finally, which is really cool. Sand green is such a cool color in Lego. Using lots of slopes there and then tiles to kind of smooth it off to give it that good Muunilinst look right there, and then slopes around the outside for rock work, and then using some inverted pieces and stuff like that kind of up top there to kind of have an overhang. So it's just a small little piece of debris that I wanted to add in there. So here is what the battlefield is looking like so far with the pieces of debris right here. First thing you might be noticing is the middle is pretty wide open. The reason for that is just because that's where I think the bulk of the speeder bike chase is going to take place. So I want it to be open so all the speeder bikes can charge at each other, crash into each other, stabbing each other. I kind of want that all in the middle, just the big clash of all the different speeder bikes. So that's why the middle is fairly open. There's not much debris. The debris will just kind of be the surrounding area. And then the middle will be where the real battle's going down with all the speeder bikes. So that's kind of why there's nothing really in the middle right now. And then over here we've got these pieces of debris that I've shown off and worked on throughout the episode. I might end up getting rid of this back one. I might just scrap that. I'm not really too happy with it anymore. So, but I do like these two things right here, which I think works. And then we've just got another piece of debris down over here in this corner with that column. So I'm going to stop with the debris for this episode. The main reason for that is I'm curious to see what are your guys' thoughts on the debris field right now. Do you think I should add in more debris? I think I want to add in a few more things, like super simple things like the columns. I might want to add a few more kind of small things like that throughout the battlefield. But I don't want to overcrowd it because the main thing is going to be the speeder bike chase, which I want to have plenty of room to do. But I'm just curious on how much debris you guys think I should have. Should I have a lot more debris? Should I have less debris? I'm really just curious to see what you guys have to say about just the whole debris field in general. So I'll be looking forward to those comments. But for now, I'm happy with what I've accomplished so far in this episode. So that's probably going to be it for debris work for this episode. Next thing that I'm going to move on to for the remainder of the episode is a trench. So right over here you can see I've started to outline what a trench might look like. I might end up actually moving the trench over in this area, but for now I've got it carved out right there for a general shape, and I've got the Clone Trooper Lieutenant right there to kind of show you guys size reference, but this is kind of what I'm thinking for the size of the trench. And the top's already done now, kind of like I showed earlier, where each of these sections can kind of pull out and move them at like a puzzle. So I've already got the top of the trench done now. So next thing I'm going to work on is the inner lining walls of the trench underneath this. That's kind of the next big thing to work on. So I'm going to go ahead and start to work on that, and I'll update you guys with a few prototype designs. I've got 3 designs here that I've been messing around with for the inner linings of the trench, which is always an important part of the trenches and something I try to put a lot of focus on because it's kind of one of the first things you notice. So this is going to be what's going to cover the inside of the trench, like the walls of the inside of the trench. 3 designs right here, 3 vastly different designs. I wanted to get 3 completely different designs. And since these build series, I like to show kind of my process of when I'm building, I thought I'd show you these 3 real quick. First one right here is tank treads, Lego like tank tread pieces that you see on like Hailfire droids and stuff like that, just in black. And essentially what I've done here is, the way I've got them lined up is, imagine that this is the wall flat, and then like the rocks are up here, so it'd be laying flat down like this. It's kind of hard to see, but you can kind of see the grooves this gives off with just the kind of tread pieces. There's a whole bunch of different lines and textures that it kind of gives when I've got them 2 pieces stacked on top of each other like this. Next, I'm using some larger light gray slope pieces right here. I actually really do like this design because you can see the individual lines when they attach to each other. So I actually really like that. So I am quite happy with going like something like this. It's super simple, but I think it's really clean and it works really well. Lastly is my favorite design right here, using dark gray plates and sand green plates, as well as a few masonry brick. Alright, so I've been working on the trench right here, and I kind of showed you guys the designs that came up earlier with like these designs. The inner lining of the trench, so I decided to go with this one, the 1x2 plates with sand green and dark gray. Use that as the inner lining of the trench, and then also put in some cheese slopes, so you can kind of see the cheese slopes, how they kind of angle down, because these are angled sideways like that, and then those kind of rounded off a little bit on the inside down there, and I think it gives it a really cool look. I didn't want to do it, I wanted to do it angled. I just felt like that was a lot better than doing it straight up and down. I wanted to make something a little more unique. The reason I also did it angled was because, and I'm kind of realizing this is a fault of my own here, what I'm realizing now is, since this is sloped like that, having anything out farther than it kind of gets rid of the whole curvy trench thing. So if you look at it right now, it's not as curved as it was earlier before I put in the inner lining of the trench, because like all this stuff is sticking out farther than the actual slopes. Now I could scooch them up like I did over here, but now that is overhanging. So now that slope overhangs this, so it doesn't look as good. So now the problem is, building a wall like that doesn't really work because this is sloped. So the inner lining of the trench almost also has to be sloped in order for it to look really good, which is unfortunate. But what I'm happy about here is I really love the side design, and I'm also really happy with this whole thing with the cheese slopes. So with the cheese slopes right there, you can see how it kind of ties in very nicely to the kind of wall right there. And I gotta say, I really do love the sand green and dark gray look. I haven't really experimented with this too much, and I really do like the way it looks. So I'm happy I did this because now I've got a really cool design for later on with these cheese slopes. But again, I'm not really happy with the shape anymore, and now the trench is like ridiculously big. I didn't want it to be this big, I wanted it to be a lot smaller. So this was attempt number 1. I think it looks cool, but it's a little too big, and what I mentioned earlier with not having like sloped inner linings of the trench, it kind of is offset and it looks a little odd. So I have one more idea that I'm going to try for the inner linings of the trench. So I'm going to go ahead and try that and hope it works. But I wanted to show you guys this first design because I just want to show you guys the process, but also I'm actually kind of happy with this design. I think it looks pretty cool, and I'm going to kind of tuck it away for later to use maybe in the city or somewhere else like that. So I just mentioned how I was going to tuck away the design for later. Well, I have now thought of a place where I can use that design actually over here in the battlefield. So what I'm kind of thinking is, what I love about that is, to me, it gives a really cool underground type vibe, if that makes sense, with like the sand green and the dark gray. So what might be cool is anytime there's a crater in the battlefield, is the inside of the crater being filled with designs just like that. So like you'll have a crack in the ground and you'll be able to see into the ground, and you'll be able to see like pieces of that design right there with sand green and dark gray. I think that's going to be an awesome look. So then it's not just darkness or black, like you look into it and you actually can see some designs, almost like you can see the layers of like Earth, or not Earth, I guess we're on a different planet. You can see the layers of ground underneath it, and it'd be those colors with the sand green and dark gray. So I think that's what I'm going to do for craters in here, is kind of implement that design inside of the craters and cracks. I think that'll look really good. Now back on to the trench is what I need to work on. Alright guys, so I worked more on the trench here. This is the second design that I came up with. So I actually did use the inner lining design from the previous trench design that I worked on, and I actually used that as the ground design for this trench to kind of again show that the cracks in the ground, when you see through the cracks in the ground, you can see the sand green mixed with the dark gray. I think that works really well for color and color balance. And then it's kind of hard to see down in there, but the actual, what I use for the inner linings of the trench, you can see down there, is light gray slopes. So I decided to use light gray slopes for the actual inner linings of the trench. For this one, I thought that worked pretty well, and then I stacked some tiles on top of the actual slopes to give it some interesting texture. So that is what's being used as the inner line, the inner lining of the trench, and then the bottom ground is the design I showed last time. So the reason I use slopes is, I like, as you can kind of see, it's not very flashy down there for the inner lining. It's nothing super special for the kind of wall design of the trench. But again, what I mentioned previously was I had to use slopes so that I could maintain kind of this interesting curvature that I have going on to kind of keep the trench in more of a curved shape. So now you can see it actually, unlike the previous design, now you can see this design maintains that curve in the trench. So it's not just so straight up and down. So I think this works a little better. I'll have to ask you guys, maybe you guys like the other design better, I'm not sure. So I'll have to look in the comment section below and see what you guys think. But this is kind of what I got going so far. This trench is a little smaller than the previous trenches. It's not as deep because I wanted to kind of have the clones be able to like crouch and shoot through instead of having to like stand. I thought that'd be a little different than what I've done previously. So the clones are all crouching right there and kind of shooting out over the trench. So this is kind of the design I've got going so far. And that's probably also going to wrap it up for the episode and all the work that I've done on this episode. I'm just curious to see, I'm at a good stopping point now. Curious to see what you guys have to say about the kind of the debris field as well as the trench design. Maybe you guys like the first trench design better. I'm not really too sure, but this second one is a lot simpler, and I think it actually makes the trench still have that kind of angled look instead of just the flat look that the other one gave. So I think I'm pretty happy with this one so far. Obviously, it's going to look a lot better once I'm able to fill in all the area around it. I haven't been able to do that. Oh, we got a man down. I haven't been able to do that yet, so it still looks a little plain. But yeah, this is the second trench design that I've got going. I'm sure I'm going to go back in and probably try another trench design sometime soon. But for this episode, that's kind of going to be all that I get done for now. So, all right, so just like I stated in the previous clip right there, that's going to be all the progress I get done for this episode. I tried to pack a lot of stuff in this episode. I'm trying to get a lot more done per episode because I think it's just more exciting. It's not very exciting to watch me get nothing done. That's the one thing I want to try to do with this build series, is get more progress done in each episode while still hopefully trying to keep them not super long. I had my videos in the Clone Wars mock update series were just ridiculously long. So, but anyway, here is what we got going for this episode. I expanded the battlefield right here. I added in little pieces of debris all over the place, and I worked on this trench. So feedback on all this stuff would be greatly appreciated on the, like, how do you think the trench looks so far, the debris field. I'm going to add more debris for sure, but how much more should I add? That's one of the big questions here, is how much more should I add for debris? And yeah, I mean, the MOC's coming along. It's starting to go places now, so this is very exciting. I'm very happy with the battlefield so far, so I guess that's really it, and let's move on to the outro. Alright guys, that's going to do it for this episode. I hope you did enjoy. I'm looking for feedback on the debris field and what you guys think about the debris field design so far, and as well as the one design I've got going for the trench. I'm really curious to see what you guys have to say about that. So thank you guys so much for watching, and as always, leave your feedback in the comment section below. Hope you guys have a great day, and may the Force be with you always.